and welcome to the Dynamic Duel podcast, a weekly show where we review superhero films and debate the superiority between Marvel and DC by comparing their characters in stat-based battle simulations. I'm Marvelous Joe.
And I'm his twin brother, Johnny DC.
And in this episode, we are going to find out who would win in a fight between Hourman and Bishop. Now, this may not be a duel that a lot of people have asked for, but we were trying to find a good matchup for Hourman. And Bishop was pretty much the best we could think of. Why?
Well, for one thing, Bishop is an X-Men character. We did an X-Men review of sorts in our last episode.
Right.
But also because later on in the year, we plan on pitting the JSA, of which Hourman is a part of, against the Fantastic Four.
Right, but why is this a good match?
Oh, because they're both characters that deal with time travel, and they're both characters that can augment their physical stats.
Correct. So they're both fascinating characters. We'll learn all about them later on in this episode as we go into their histories and abilities, and then run 1,000 simulations to see who would win. Before that, we usually go into the comic book movie news from the past week, but since there is no real comic book movie news to talk about...
There's a ton of rumors.
Yeah, a ton of rumors. We're going to talk about the Marvel Future Revolution mobile game trailer that was released today.
During C2E2.
Yeah.
Occasionally we talk about video games. We're not the biggest gamers.
No.
So we don't talk about it often, but these trailers were pretty interesting.
As always, we list our segment times in the episode description, so go ahead and check out the show notes if you want to skip ahead to a particular topic.
As always, guys, please don't forget to share, subscribe, rate, and review our podcast on whatever platform you happen to be listening to us on.
Yeah, and follow us on Instagram because we have a lot of cool stuff on there. It's like our social media platform of choice for this podcast. I think you get a real good vibe for the show by visiting there because we have all the clips and the no prize artwork and stories that feature upcoming episodes and things like that. So if you're on Instagram, search for Dynamic Duel Podcast and you'll find us and help us grow our following. With that out of the way,
quick, to the No Prize. So a No Prize is an award that Marvel used to give out up until the 90s to fans. Our version, the Dynamic Duel No Prize, is a digital award that we post on social media that we personally draw for those who we feel gave the best answer to our question of the week.
Last week's question was, do you think Robert Pattinson's Batman will be or should be introduced into the larger DCEU? And if so, how?
We got a lot of answers for this one and a lot of interesting creative ideas for how this could happen if it were to happen.
First honorable mention goes to Harrison Fox, saying that Pattinson should join the DCEU and that the Batman movie will be a prequel, seeing Pattinson grow eventually into Ben Affleck's version of Batman.
Which kind of makes sense since these Matt Reeves films supposedly are supposed to take place in Batman's early years.
Yeah.
Like we still get to see maybe Joker beating up Jason Todd and all these things that were alluded to in like Batman v Superman.
Yeah. But would that make the Batman a period piece set in like the 90s or 80s?
I mean, it could be. I wouldn't rule that out.
Yeah.
It would actually make it easier for Jared Leto's Joker to be a part of those films if they wanted to go that route.
Yeah. The Krypton Report podcast gets honorable mention. I think this is the first time another podcast has answered one of our questions of the week.
Yeah.
They said that, yes, Pattinson should be in the DCEU and that the Batman should take place on an alternate Earth. And they really want to see another Justice League again.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, that's the goal. I want to see Batman alongside these other members of the Justice League. And honestly, the sooner it happens, the better. I know people don't like to rush things, but I love seeing these characters all together.
Yeah, I mean, Marvel gets Avengers films every few years. DC has so far only had one Justice League team-up film with no others in sight.
And I die a little every day.
Dustin Balcom gets honorable mention for saying that Pattinson should join the DCEU, but they should build up the Gotham cast first. Then, if that's successful, introduce him as the new Batman in the Justice League through a Flashpoint story.
And that's a very practical answer.
Yes. As you guys know, Flashpoint is a story where the Flash went back in time, which caused like time ripples that made subtle changes across the DC universe. And when he came back, there were like quite a few changes that nobody noticed. So you could easily recast Ben Affleck as Robert Pattinson with nobody acting like anything is wrong through the explanation of time ripples.
Exactly. Colby Henches said that Pattinson should not be introduced into the DCEU and just introduce a Batman-adjacent character like Batwoman instead. And she could refer to Batman off screen, saying he's off doing some other things.
That could make sense too, actually. I wouldn't mind that at all. Joel Seagrave said that Pattinson should not join the DCEU, saying that the Batman universe should be separate, with occasional standalone movies like Joker.
I mean, it's hard to argue with the success of a film like The Joker.
Yeah, that's true.
Steve Elgar said that Pattinson should not join the DCEU, saying that we don't know yet if Pattinson will be any good.
That is a very prudent answer, actually. This may be an entirely premature question. Who knows? Aaron Alexander Jones gets honorable mention, saying Pattinson should not join the DCEU, but if he does, he can maybe be Affleck's younger clone.
And this is one of the few answers here that didn't rely on Flashpoint in regards to explaining how Pattinson can join the existing members of the Justice League.
Yeah.
That being said, you would probably need Affleck on board to do something like that.
Not necessarily. You just be like, hey, that other guy, he's dead. I'm his clone.
Jeez. Bo Bermuda said that Pattinson should not join the DCEU, saying that DC should really take a step back from that universe and focus on small budget standalone indies like The Joker. I think you could do both, honestly. I think you could do the larger universe and small budget indies like The Joker.
There you go. That way everybody's happy.
And I love me some Oscars, you know?
Joshua Smith gets honorable mention for saying that Pattinson should join the DCEU as an alternate timeline Batman, and he joins through Flashpoint.
Jace Crump said that Pattinson should not join the DCEU because the DC films are moving away from a larger universe, and the Batman films should be their own thing.
Jeff Miles Jr. said that Pattinson, although he called him Patman, which I loved, should join the DCEU because the DCEU does need a Batman, and you could transfer him over through a Flashpoint Paradox story.
And our final honorable mention goes to John Spees, who's saying that Pattinson should not join the DCEU, and Affleck should pass the mantle on to Batman Beyond for the DCEU films.
And that's a great answer. It would be really cool to see Batman Beyond in the DCEU.
I mean, they did establish that Affleck was like at Batman retirement age.
Yeah.
So it might work. But the winners of this week's No Prize goes to Son of Farhumand and Matthew Gonzalez, who both basically said, just have Robert Pattinson and Ben Affleck be the same character and plug Robert Pattinson into the existing DCEU.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they did with the Michael Keaton transition into Val Kilmer and stuff. They were the same character. Nobody asked questions as to why they look different. And it's what they did even in the MCU with characters like James Rhodes and Bruce Banner. You just had different actors with Don Cheadle and Mark Ruffalo. Nobody asked questions.
So essentially, the best way to address it is to not address it.
Yeah.
And just let it play out.
Yeah, it's proven to work before, so we think it's the most prudent answer.
Matthew Gonzalez even mentioned that, down the road, Pattinson isn't going to be Batman forever. They're going to recast him. So all of these characters will eventually be recast, and it would be nice for all of them to exist within the same universe still and not have to reboot it every time you have to recast.
Yeah, you can only do so many Flashpoint paradoxes.
Exactly. So thanks once again to Sana Farhumand and Matthew Gonzalez. You guys win this week's No Prize. If you, the listener, want to win your own No Prize, stay tuned to the rest of the episode when we'll ask another question of the week.
And now that that's done,
on to the news.
So at the C2E2 event this year, which is held in Chicago, C2E2 actually stands for Chicago Comic and Entertainment Expo, Marvel and Netmarble announced a new mobile video game that they're going to be releasing. Now, they've worked together previously on a Marvel mobile game called Marvel Future Fight, which is kind of like this action RPG, like dungeon crawler type game, similar to Marvel Ultimate Alliance. And that's a pretty cool game. I had a lot of fun with that one for about a week before I stopped playing, just because it's hard for me to play these Marvel video games as the characters that I don't want to be, I guess. Like, I just want a game where I can amass as many of the characters as I can and then pick and choose amongst those.
Without paying money?
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of my issue with a lot of the Marvel games, honestly, because I think I played like Contest of Champions for like a good half a year before I finally just got sick of the grinding and the leveling up system. Although I did really like the gameplay of that fighting game. It was really good.
I remember like you almost broke down crying because you accidentally gave the Hulk an attribute that you didn't want to give him that you'd been saving up for.
That was Avengers Alliance that I did that on,
okay.
Which was another mobile game. There's been quite a few mobile games like Puzzle Quest. I actually played that for a while. That was fun. There's Marvel Strike Force, which I played for like a month. That's like a turn-based 4 versus 4 strategy game.
Marvel has a ton of games, like way more than DC. Like DC has Injustice 2, and we have like DC Legends.
Uh-huh.
And like that's it.
Anyway, this new Marvel and Netmarble mobile video game is going to be called Future Revolution, and it's actually going to be an open world RPG.
And that's amazing. Yeah, you could do that on a mobile game.
Yeah, I really can't wait. This is going to be another one that I definitely pick up, and hopefully I play it for, a period of longer than 6 months. But it does look really interesting. If you haven't watched the trailer for this game yet, definitely check out the announcement trailer for Future Revolution, because it's a video where you see Captain America fighting, I think, these Outriders.
Yeah.
And he's joined by Spider-Man and Captain Marvel and Doctor Strange. But Doctor Strange opens up these portals to all these alternate universes where you see alternate versions of these 4 characters come through and fight alongside the main heroes.
Yeah, you see like Spider-Punk, you see like Secret Empire Captain America.
Yeah, which I hate, actually.
Right, yeah. But it makes me really wonder, like, if the characters' leveling systems change the characters to, like, alternate versions.
It's possible, or it might be just a customization option as you unlock certain costumes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now, they've only announced these 4 heroes thus far for the game. It's likely that they're going to launch with a larger roster, but they decided to focus on these 4 so that you could get a better idea of what the gameplay is like, as opposed to just seeing all these characters. And the gameplay looks a lot like Marvel Future Fight and Ultimate Alliance, where it's kind of like a dungeon crawler where you go through and you battle all these bad guys and then you get to a boss fight. The boss fights look highly impressive.
Oh, yeah, like Yellow Jacket?
Yeah, and Red Skull, and Baron Mordo, and MODOK. It all looks like a whole lot of fun. Interestingly enough, one of the villains for the game that they announced is the Red Goblin, which is Green Goblin that is taken over by the Carnage symbiote.
And that's, like, relatively new, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. The design for Green Goblin within this game before he becomes Red Goblin is really compelling. Like, it's a great design for, I think, a future appearance by the Green Goblin in the MCU. The way he feels like goblin-y, but also high-tech. It's a great amalgamation between like what they did in the original Spider-Man movie and in the comics.
I could totally see that version being in a world where like Tony Stark lives and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Norman Osborn is like another like tech giant.
Definitely. I like the designs on all these characters, honestly. I think it's some of the best that we've seen in these video games.
Just to touch on the characters again, I'm not surprised that they decided to introduce these 4 because they're kind of like your tank healer, like ranged attacker and melee attacker that are sort of like the classic 4 you need when going through like RPGs.
So which one is which?
So like Captain America would be the tank, the healer would probably be Doctor Strange, your ranged attacker would be Captain Marvel, and your melee guy would probably be Spider-Man.
Interesting. Yeah, you're probably right. But I can't wait to like switch out my tank for like the Hulk. And my brawler for like Wolverine or something,
That would be cool.
It's going to be fun. Now, we don't know when the game's going to come out yet. This is just the announcement trailer that was revealed. It's going to come out within the next year or so, I would have to assume. But it's coming out for both Apple devices and Android mobile devices. And it's free to play. Probably not free to win. But, it looks really cool. Look forward to it.
Man, I've been waiting for Rocksteady Studios to announce their, like, Arkham-style Justice League game for, like, years.
Is that in the works? Is that what they're planning on doing?
I mean, it's been rumored that they were going to do, like, a Superman game, and then some people are saying, no, it's going to be the whole Justice League. They make such great DC games. They need to come out with something new soon, or at least mention something about it.
I'm looking forward to the Marvel's Avengers game. That looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. That being said, I don't actually have a gaming console to play it. So I'm looking forward to watching the YouTube videos or something.
Twitch.
Yeah. As we've mentioned in previous episodes, Jonathan and I used to be big gamers, but it's something that we kind of fell out of.
Although I got a Switch for my daughters for Christmas.
Yeah.
And they've been getting really good at Smash Brothers.
Really?
So, yeah, I've been playing more now than I have in years.
Really?
Yeah.
I wonder if they could beat me now.
I think they'll give you a run for your money for sure.
But speaking of Marvel and DC games, that brings us to our question of the week.
What is your favorite Marvel or DC mobile app?
And this doesn't just have to be a game. It could be any app that is Marvel or DC related.
There may be something out there that we don't know about yet. That's just awesome.
Yeah.
I would love to hear about that.
Uh-huh.
Post your answer to our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or email us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com. We'll pick our favorite answer and draw that person a Dynamic Duel No Prize that we'll post to social media.
But that does it for all the news for this episode. Again, it's a really slow news week. And hopefully within the next few days, we'll get a big movie announcement or something like that. I feel like we've been saying that for a few weeks now. But that just means that it's got to be coming, right?
I mean, it better.
Or else what?
Or else I'll just continue to wait.
Let's go ahead and get into the main event of this episode, where we discuss who would win in a fight between the JSA's Hourman and the X-Men's Bishop. Okay, Hourman versus Bishop. Why are we pitting these two characters against each other? Well, as we said at the beginning of this episode, they're both time-related, and they both have the ability to augment and enhance their physical attributes.
Other than that, I don't think I'm familiar enough with Bishop to say if there's any other correlations. I'm actually looking forward to hearing more about him, because I remember him from the cartoons. I feel like he's a relatively popular character.
Yeah, within the X-Men universe, for sure.
I just don't know anything about him.
And likewise, I don't know too much about Hourman, save that I think he has a pretty dope costume, and that he's also a drug addict.
So, it's sort of, yeah. But it's a good drug. Which there's no such thing, kids. No such thing.
As you guys may know, as we've mentioned in past episodes, every 50 episodes we will be doing a big team-up match. About 15 episodes ago, we did a team match between the Titans and the X-Men. And then 50 episodes before that, we pit the Justice League against the Avengers. Coming up for episode 200, we will be pitting the JSA against the Fantastic Four. And because of that, over the next few months, we will be doing duels with both Fantastic Four characters and JSA characters.
We'll get into the backstories of both Hourman and Bishop.
But first, let's go over how this works.
Each one of our duel episodes, we like to start off by going into the backstories and abilities of these characters. And once we're done with that, we speculate on how a battle between the two will go.
Right, but the winner is actually chosen through a probabilistic model known as a Monte Carlo simulation. Now, we run 1,000 of these simulations, and from that, we get a percentage of wins for each character.
Right, a Monte Carlo simulation involves gathering stats. In this case, we take ours from the official Marvel Power Rankings, and we extrapolate DC stats from that. And then those stats are randomized along a normal distribution, which is a bell curve.
Right, we compare those numbers against each other 1,000 times, and that is the simulation. It accounts for all the variables that take place in battle, and the Monte Carlo simulation is a tried and true method for commercial risk assessment.
It was also the method used by the old Spike TV show Deadliest Warrior.
Yeah, it's a scientific mathematical approach to answer the question of who would win, which is good because Jonathan and I are both heavily biased.
Right.
So, we don't rely on uncharacteristic feats from the comics. We don't rely on fan votes.
It's all based on stats.
Yeah, so now that you know how we do this, let's go ahead and get into the histories and abilities of the characters, starting off with Hourman from the JSA.
Right, and specifically Rick Tyler as Hourman, because that's who I'll be using in this match. But really, there have been 3 men to carry the mantle of Hourman throughout DC's history and future. And to tell the story of one Hourman is to tell the story of all 3. The legacy of Hourman began with Rex Tyler before World War II. Raised in upstate New York during the Great Depression, Rex had a rather humble upbringing, though he had an affinity for chemistry and biology. He worked his way through college in Appleton City as a researcher at Bannerman Chemical, where his timid nature and obsessive punctuality earned him the nickname TikTok Tyler.
Is it because he was so popular on TikTok?
Yes. During Rex's research into a nerve gas antidote, a series of accidents led to his discovery of a miraculous vitamin that, in concentrated doses, boosted the strength, speed, and vigor of laboratory rats.
Oh, is that what we're calling it now? A vitamin?
Yes. Now, considering both the evidence of the vitamin's addictive nature and the upcoming World War, Rex determined that the vitamin's formula would be too dangerous in the wrong hands, so he kept his discovery a secret, but decided to perform a human test trial on himself.
Of course he did.
Oh my gosh. The vitamin pill, which he named Miraclo, had the same effect on him as it did the laboratory rats, but for 1 hour.
So basically he's just taking steroids in his lab.
Dude, this was before steroids were a thing.
Really?
I don't know how old steroids are. Rex decided to use his enhanced abilities as a costumed crime fighter, Hourman, and eventually he garnered the attention of other superheroes such as Sandman and Dr. Fate, the latter of whom recruited him to help stop Adolf Hitler as a founding member of the Justice Society of America. Listeners can learn more about Dr. Fate in our Dr. Fate vs. Dr. Strange episode. After years of fighting in the war, Rex realized that in his continual use of Miraclo, he became dependent on and addicted to the drug. Vitamin. He took a leave of absence from the JSA and experimented with new, less addictive versions of Miraclo, as well as new methods of administrating the vitamin, though they were never as convenient as the pill. After serving brief stints helping both the Freedom Fighters and the All-Star Squadron fight in World War II, Rex retired after the war to focus on his research. He eventually bought Bannerman Chemicals using independent patent royalties and renamed it Tyler Chemical Company, or Tyler Co. Rex married an up-and-coming actress named Wendy Harris, and they had a son, whom they named Rick. Busy with research and his business, Rex had little time for Rick, who grew to prefer sports and art over the sciences, to Rex's displeasure. Still, Rex took notice of his son's physical abilities and re-engineered Miraclo to not only improve the strength and speed it provided, but also to only work with his and Rick's similar DNA.
I feel like he's going to get his son kicked out of whatever professional sports organization he joins.
The increased benefit resulted in increased addictive potential, however, and Rex forbade his son from using it. Despite Rex's warnings, Rick took the Miraclo during the Crisis on Infinite Earths event to save his crush, Beth Chapel, and patients at a nearby hospital. Taking after his father, Rick joined a superhero team known as Infinity Inc., whose membership was primarily composed of the children of the JSA, and it wasn't long before their parents, including Rex Tyler, abandoned Earth to fight an eternal war in a limbo-like dimension to prevent Ragnarok. Rex and the other JSA members had essentially died. Rick did not take his father's death well, and accidentally killed a member of the Injustice Society when Infinity Inc. was attacked. Depressed and addicted, Rick eventually gave up the Hourman mantle when Infinity Inc. was disbanded. The original JSA members eventually discovered a loophole while in limbo that allowed them to return to Earth. Rex reunited with his son, only to discover that the more potent Miraclo had given Rick leukemia.
Yikes.
Rex helped wean his son off the Miraclo and realized, with the help of former All-Star Squadron member Johnny Quick, that the Miraclo merely activated a latent metagene within him and his son, and together, through meditation, they developed a method of mentally activating their powers without the need for Miraclo.
Oh, interesting.
It wasn't long before Rex sacrificed himself to the time-manipulating villain Extant, who you can learn more about in our previous Hawk and Dove vs. Northstar and Aurora Duel episode. Rick remained sick and was retired for years until he met an intelligent nanotech colony from the 853rd century who called himself Hourman. This Hourman was created by Tyler Chemo Robotics in the future, apparently in a former time-traveling adventure by Rex, who used his DNA as a basis for its nanostructure. It was commissioned by the new god Metron, who intended the nanotech android to be his successor and imbued it with the Warlagog, an artifact that was a map of space-time, also known in the DC universe as the Philosopher's Stone.
Didn't you say the Philosopher's Stone was going to be in the upcoming Wonder Woman movie?
Oh yeah, that's the rumor. Yeah, that would be the Warlagog.
So the Philosopher's Stone can grant wishes and travel through time?
It manipulates space-time.
Okay.
The android Hourman, who also went by the name Matthew Tyler, had been a member of the Justice League of America for years prior to meeting Rick, helping them on several time-traveling adventures as the Warlagog granted him complete control over time. After his system was corrupted by a future villain known as Solaris during the DC 1 Million event, and after he found it difficult to adjust to human life in the 20th century, Matthew dispersed fragments of the Warlagog throughout time, allowing himself ownership of only a portion that would allow him to access his time control powers for 1 hour each day.
Interesting.
Though Rick initially disliked Matthew when they first met, Matthew was able to recognize that Rick didn't suffer from cancer, but from an alien virus. Matthew moved Rick to a point outside of the timeline to prevent the virus from further harm and spread. Matthew's nemesis, the android Amazo, later helped cure Rick of his virus, shortly before Matthew decided to leave the 20th century and explore more of the universe's timeline. Before he left, however, Matthew gave Rick 2 gifts. One was an hourglass medallion filled with tachyons that allowed Rick to glimpse 1 hour into the future, and the second was his father, Rex, who Matthew plucked from the timeline seconds before he died and placed in the same time point where Rick formerly resided. Rick was able to travel to the time point to visit his father Rex, though they could only spend a total of 1 hour together, at which point Rex would be returned to the moment in the timeline before his death. With Matthew gone, Rick took up the mantle of Hourman once again, joining the new JSA team and occasionally visiting his father Rex in the time point when he needed help or advice. During a battle between the JSA and a team of supervillains led by Black Adam, Rick was run through by a sword. To save his life, he traveled to the time point and sent his father Rex back to Earth in his place to prevent their 1 hour together from running out. With no way back to the time point, Rex eventually found Matthew, who transported him and the hero Dr. Midnight, a surgeon, to Rick, operating on him and saving his life. That, however, used up the 1 hour Rick and Rex had together, and they said their goodbyes before Rex returned to the past to face his death. Matthew intervened, however, and took Rex's place, projecting a hologram to disguise himself as Rex and sacrificing himself so Rick and Rex could remain together. Rex collected the remains of Matthew and spent his retirement trying to rebuild him. Rick remained a member of the JSA and married fellow teammate Jesse Chambers, aka Jesse Quick and later Liberty Bell. Shortly before the New 52, Rick and Jesse had a son named Johnny, who is babysat by Rex whenever his parents are fighting crime. Members of the JSA were absent in the post-Flashpoint continuity until recently, when Dr. Manhattan returned them to the timeline, including Rick as Hourman. Now, Rick has returned to using a more advanced, non-addictive form of Miraclo, granting him 1 hour of super strength, he can lift about 25 tons, and comparable durability. He also has enhanced speed, agility, stamina, and his tachyon hourglass necklace allows him to glimpse 1 hour into the future. That's Hourman.
Is it up to 1 hour in the future? Could it be like 10 minutes if he wants it to be? Or is it exactly 1 hour from the time that he activates the dial?
It's exactly 1 hour, and it's only a glimpse.
Okay. So I imagine that when he uses it during the course of this fight, he's going to see himself dead 1 hour into the future.
Nope. He's going to see himself victorious.
Nope. It's going to be lights out for him because Bishop is the man. Let me tell you all about him. So Bishop's first name is Lucas. Bishop is his last name.
So Lucas Bishop?
Yeah.
That's a cool name.
Yeah. So his story begins 80 years into the future. Late in the 21st century, the X-Men are no more. Sentinel robots murdered them and thousands of other mutants on behalf of the government in retaliation for the death of 1 million humans. The Sentinels ended up taking over all of North America, turning the continent into an apocalyptic nightmare. Surviving mutants were isolated in internment camps, where Lucas Bishop was born and raised, a camp in Brooklyn, New York. As a child, he was branded with the large letter M over the right side of his face, along with his sister Shard, to identify them as mutants. As society crumbled around them, their grandmother told them stories of the heroic X-Men and the vision of Charles Xavier for humans and mutants to live together in peace. During their time in the camp, both humans and mutants rose up in rebellion against the Sentinels in a war for freedom. Bishop's grandmother, who actually may have been Storm, died during this time, but her dying wish was for Bishop to always protect his sister and never forget the heroism and dream of the X-Men, which you can learn more about in our Titans vs. X-Men episode. With all the Sentinels destroyed in the uprising, Bishop, his sister, and all mutants were finally free to leave the camps, though segregation between them and humans still existed. Soon, a mutant terrorist group known as the Exhumes started attacking humans, and veterans from the Sentinel War formed a mutant police force to keep the peace. They were known as the Xavier Security Enforcers, or the XSE.
Sexy.
No, not A, sexy.
Yeah.
It's XSE.
Okay.
Named in honor of Charles Xavier. Bishop saw in them the chance to honor his grandmother's wishes, and he and his sister Shard joined the force. They became cadets alongside another mutant named Trevor Fitzroy, and the three rose to commanding officers through their battles against the Exhumes. Shard and Fitzroy became romantically involved, though it was later discovered that Fitzroy was a secret murderer and criminal, and Bishop was forced to arrest him. Fitzroy had the mutant ability to convert others' drained life energy into space-time portals. While in prison, he used these powers to escape, along with 93 other mutant criminals, all serving life sentences.
Whoa.
Bishop followed them through the portal, joined by his XSC partners Malcolm and Randall, and they all found themselves in the present timeline, where he got to meet his heroes of legend, the X-Men. Together, they captured and killed the escaped mutant convicts, though not without casualties. Malcolm and Randall died, and Bishop was severely wounded trying to defeat Fitzroy. The X-Men took Bishop into Xavier's Institute to recover, and Professor X offered him a spot on the team. Bishop was a valuable member of the X-Men, though he was often difficult to work with as he frequently clashed with members of the team that he suspected of causing the future downfall of the X-Men, including Gambit and Cable. But Bishop proved instrumental in saving human and mutant kind from the likes of Strife, Sabretooth, and especially Onslaught, who was the psychic manifestation of Magneto's hatred and Professor X's suppressed anger. Bishop learned that in his timeline, it was Onslaught that led to the eventual fall of the X-Men, and he used this knowledge and his energy absorption powers to protect Earth's heroes from an incalculably powerful psychic energy blast. Bishop was later pulled into a timeline in which Fitzroy had escaped to and taken over as its ruler. He rejoined his sister Shard, and together they defeated Fitzroy and saved that timeline. Upon his return, he joined Storm and her own version of the XSC called the Extreme Sanctions Executive, which was a United Nations-backed international mutant peacekeeping force. The new XSC didn't last long, however, before the events of M-Day occurred, where the Scarlet Witch eradicated the powers of most of the Earth's mutants in a fit of madness you can learn more about in our Zatanna vs. Scarlet Witch episode. Many of New York's few remaining mutants resided in a New York neighborhood called District X, where the FBI requested Bishop serve as a mutant affairs police officer.
He kept his powers?
Yeah, most of the X-Men did. During the superhero civil war, in which the government called for all superhero beings to register and become official state operatives, the superhero community was split among Iron Man's pro-registration side and Captain America's anti-registration side, an event you can learn more about in our Justice League vs. Avengers episode. Bishop sided with Iron Man, having largely served as a police officer with official oversight for most of his life anyway. This led him to be at odds with many of his fellow X-Men, and he left the team. Later, the first mutant was born after the events of M-Day, with many warring over her as either the savior of mutant kind or the destructor of humanity. Bishop had his own side, believing the child would be the one that would eventually cause the death of 1 million humans and lead to the Sentinel-controlled future he was from. The mutant Cable escaped with the child to protect her, and he named her Hope Summers, which you can learn more about in our Booster Gold vs. Cable episode. Bishop followed the pair into the future, intent on killing Hope to prevent the genocide of the future. His arm got severed in the pursuit, but he equipped a new metal arm complete with time travel technology built by the mutant genius inventor Forge. Bishop eventually realized the error of his ways, believing that the violence caused while hunting the child could be what drives her to violence in the future, and he relented on Cable and Hope. They ended up calling an uneasy truce. Recently, Bishop has helped the X-Men and the rest of Earth's mutants form a mutant haven on the island nation of Krakoa, and that's his history. Powers-wise, Bishop has the mutant ability to absorb projected energy and repurpose it for a variety of effects, most commonly converting the energy and redirecting it from his hands as a concussive force blast. However, he can also redirect the energy in the same form in which it was absorbed. For example, if he was shot with fire, he can absorb and project fire back. He can also choose to store the energy inside his body instead and use it to temporarily enhance his physical characteristics to superhuman levels, including speed, strength, durability, and healing speed. The types of energy he can absorb include all forms of projected working energy, including heat, light, as in lasers, kinetic energy, as in force blasts, electrical energy, chemical energy, nuclear energy, gravitational energy, and psychic energy.
What?
He cannot absorb the inertia of impacts, such as blunt or piercing physical impacts, but he can absorb a portion of their kinetic energy transfer. This is a largely ineffective means of building power though, as in if you punch him, he only absorbs a fraction of the impact. Though I have seen him sustain a prolonged beating while chained up, managing to survive long enough to break the chains. His absorption abilities do have their limits, and if and when Bishop is overloaded with energy, his body releases it explosively around him until the excess energy is gone. He is also a trained combatant with the XSC police force and is a trained marksman with his futuristic energy rifle, which he typically carries with him. The rifle is rechargeable, and he can use his own stored energy to charge it. His cybernetic right arm grants him enhanced strength with that arm, as well as the ability to time jump and override external computer systems. And that's his powers.
Can he still shoot energy out of that arm?
No, but the arm is nuclear powered, and he can drain energy from the arm into his body if he needs to. So did you learn anything there?
Learned that Bishop is a punk-ass bitch who's gonna get his ass handed to him.
Too far. But now that we got the history and the abilities of the characters out of the way, we're going to go ahead and dive into an improvised scenario where we go over beat by beat how we think one of the 1,000 simulated matches that we run will actually pan out. Now, we don't set any rules for this particular scenario in which the characters meet and fight, save for the fact that they don't know anything about each other going into the battle, other than that the other character is a threat that needs to be put down. The battle takes place in an environment that has no bearing on the match itself because we don't take stats for the environment.
Right, and some characters have advantages in certain environments over others, so we don't want that to be any kind of factor on the results. The characters have to win on their own merits.
Yeah, so don't make any assumptions about the environment, except we do say that the characters start about 50 yards apart from each other.
I think that's all the rules, so who goes first? There is one question I forgot to ask, I guess. How strong is Bishop?
Bishop can double his lifting strength when he enhances his physicals. Typically, he can lift a little over 500 pounds, so when he stores his energy, he typically doubles that strength, although his upper limit really isn't known.
So around 1,000 pounds?
Yeah, about half a ton. Though he can go higher if he focuses on converting his energy toward that.
Interesting. Like the first version of MacLeod that Rex Tyler made gave him the strength of 5 Olympians, so even that is more powerful than Bishop.
I mean, generally speaking, yes. Circumstantially, possibly not. But Bishop doesn't need strength. He has so much more going for him, including his ranged attacks, which he's going to start this match off with. By pulling out his plasma rifle and firing at Hourman.
Okay, so Hourman starts running, and as he's running, he pops a MacLeod tablet. Okay?
Which makes him faster?
Makes him faster, makes him stronger. In order to shield himself from the lasers, he digs his hands into whatever ground he's standing on and lifts it up, creating a barrier between him and Bishop.
Okay, so he's given himself some cover.
Yes.
Good move.
I know the environment is not supposed to play a role, but they're standing on ground.
Yeah, no matter where they're fighting, they're going to be standing on ground. So Bishop slowly starts walking toward this raised piece of land, slowly firing and looking on both sides of it to shoot Hourman as he peeks his head around.
Okay, but as Bishop gets closer and Hourman gets a sense of where he is, that's when he just lifts up that chunk of earth and just hurls it at Bishop.
Bishop's like, oh shit! And assuming he hasn't absorbed any energy into him, what he does is he draws energy from his nuclear-powered arm into his body and then shoots a huge concussive force blast at this massive land to break it apart before it hits him.
Okay, but as it breaks apart, surprise! Hourman breaks through it anyway and lands a haymaker straight on Bishop, sending him flying.
Alright, so Bishop goes flying backward, probably knocks the gun out of his hand,
right,
and he lands on the ground, all concussed.
Now Hourman has the gun, and he starts firing at Bishop.
And Bishop takes it, absorbing the energy, but not really cluing Hourman into the fact that that's what he's doing.
Okay. Why did I do that?
Because Hourman's not supposed to know, so you were playing into the character.
Okay.
So Bishop's like, oh, ow, ow, this hurts. And Hourman just keeps letting him have it. He's like, ha ha ha, and he keeps shooting him.
Okay. But I think after a while, he's going to notice that it's not really hurting him or burning him in any way.
Yeah, but Bishop is going to play dead regardless. He's just going to lay there and have Hourman walk up to him. And as soon as Hourman gets close enough, he unleashes this massive energy blast, point blank, right into Hourman's chest, which knocks the gun out of his hand and sends him flying back.
Okay, but I mean, Hourman is pretty durable. He's much more durable than Bishop. So yeah, he gets knocked back pretty far, but he's going to be up on his feet again before long.
Well, in the time that it takes him to get back to his feet, Bishop realizes how strong he is and that he might be able to tank a lot of his energy gun blasts. So what he does is Bishop turns his gun on himself and starts shooting himself and powering himself up with all of that energy.
So he's strengthening himself?
Yeah.
Isn't his gun gonna run out of, like, laser ammo?
I mean, it's rechargeable, but it has a large charge on it.
Okay.
With this amped up energy, Bishop holsters his gun, and then he speedily runs over to Hourman as he's getting up from the ground. He lifts Hourman up into the air with his normal arm, and then he starts punching him repeatedly in the face with his robotic arm.
Okay, he gets in maybe, like, 3 punches before Hourman just takes that robotic arm and breaks it, like, right at the elbow.
Oh, shit. Well, I mean, you don't want to do that because it's nuclear powered.
Hourman doesn't know that.
So, like, the arm starts, like, beeping, and then it goes and just explodes. And normally I would say that it would blast them both back, but it just blasts Hourman back because Bishop is able to absorb all that nuclear energy.
Ah, jeez.
So yeah, he only has an arm and a stump now, but he is ridiculously powered up.
Perfect.
And with all this energy and power stored up in Bishop, he's just gonna unleash this like powerful like Hadouken concussive force blast at Hourman, which just obliterates and makes him a smear.
Okay, but as Bishop is building up that attack, when Hourman got knocked back, he was still holding on to that broken arm. And you said that arm had time travel tech in it, right?
Yeah, Bishop can travel through time with his arm. It's technology that was created by Forge.
Okay, so this arm that Hourman is holding is probably on the fritz, but it's like an interesting piece of technology. So he's like fiddling with it as Bishop is about to blast him. And as he's about to get blasted, Hourman actually time jumps with the arm.
To where?
A few seconds after the blast behind Bishop. Then he just does like this front kick right to Bishop's back, sending him flying and face planting.
And Bishop is just so confused as to what just happened. So Hourman can time jump now with Bishop's severed arm?
Yep.
All right, I mean, Bishop is not going to let that happen again. So he turns around and he pulls his gun out of his holster and he shoots and disables his severed arm that Hourman's holding.
Gosh,
to make sure that he can't do that again.
Okay, well that's when Hourman just like lifts up the arm like a football and just hurls it like with all of his strength at Bishop, knocking the gun out of Bishop's hand.
Oh, he's a pretty good quarterback, huh?
He's good at sports.
Okay, so they're both disarmed, quite literally.
And as Bishop is distracted going to reach for his gun that's been knocked away, Hourman has leapt into the air, okay?
Uh-huh.
And when Bishop turns back to see where Hourman went, that's when Hourman just like drops on him, slamming him into the ground and creating like this huge impact crater.
Okay, so Bishop's probably almost dead from that. But with all that stored up energy that he has inside of him, and with Hourman like pretty much directly on top of him, Bishop's just gonna release all of it in one explosive 360-degree blast. And I'm talking about all of his energy, all of the stuff that was stored up. So he's just unleashing all of that. And really, honestly, it's just gonna decimate Hourman, and there's no escape from it.
Okay, but little did you know that when this match started, Hourman glimpsed that this was gonna happen. So
he can only glimpse an hour into the future.
Exactly, yeah.
This match has been going on for like 8 minutes.
No, it's been going on for an hour. Little did you know. So instead of landing on him and staying there, Hourman actually landed on him and then bounced away as Bishop was expelling all of his energy. Bishop is still stuck in that crater with no energy left.
I'm gonna call bullshit on that one. That was not an hour's amount of time.
Sure it was.
Hourman did not see that coming, and he's dead.
Agree to disagree.
Well, I think that does it for this matchup. We'll go ahead and leave it there. We'll find out the actual results of this match once we run the simulations. So we'll do that and be right back.
Let's do it.
All right, that was a fun match, and I kind of really love the way these stats panned out.
Yeah, they weren't similar.
No.
As similar as I thought they would be.
No, almost none of their stats were similar except for their damage potential and their strategic intelligence. But everything else was variable, and they compensated for each other in a lot of areas. Like Hourman is slightly faster and stronger and more durable.
But he has no range.
Exactly. Bishop beats him on range, and we said that he has greater protection due to the fact that he can absorb energy.
And also when it came down to damage potential, we had to average Bishop's stat, because depending on how much energy he has, he could unleash much more damage than Hourman could.
Yeah, or much less if he didn't absorb anything.
Exactly.
But the simulation runner took care of those variables within the course of battle, so everything is accounted for. I'm really interested in seeing the overall results of this match, because they seem to me to be pretty even.
Well, if you look at our Instagram poll, it was pretty much split down the middle. 50% of people said Hourman would win, and 50% said Bishop, so it's undecided.
Well, I mean, we got about 18 votes on each side for each character, but looking at the poll results, I noticed that you voted twice in our Instagram poll.
Oh, shit.
Because you have 2 Instagram accounts.
Hey, man, it's not my fault you only have 1 Instagram account.
You cheater. But let's go ahead and see how close to 50-50 this match was.
So I have the results here. Honestly, who do you think won?
Bishop. I think it was Bishop. He has the range. He can keep Hourman at bay for the most part.
You think range really gave him the edge?
Well, yeah, it's Bishop. He has a gun.
Over strength, over speed, over everything else.
Uh-huh.
Well, guess what? You're right!
Yay!
Bishop won 639 matches out of the 1,000.
Yes!
That is ridiculous. I thought it was going to be a lot closer than that.
How many did Hourman win?
361.
So Bishop wins 63.9% of the time that these 2 characters go up against each other.
Yeah, so about 3 out of every 5 matches, Bishop will take it.
Yeah, more or less. Awesome. I needed a win. Bishop came through for me. We'll put a tally in the Marvel column.
I don't even know, like, what the tallies add up to right now. Like, who's in the lead?
Marvel.
Is it?
Probably. I don't know. I don't count.
I don't know either.
We probably should do that one day.
Eventually, yeah.
But that does it for this episode, for this matchup. Please write into us and let us know what you guys thought about this duel. You can reach out to us on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, or you can email us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, you can find links to all of our social media accounts and our email address at our website, dynamicduel.com.
And there you can find links to other cool stuff, such as bonus content that we offer and merchandise, of which we sell Jonathan's no prize artwork. So Jonathan, who are you drawing for this episode?
This episode, I'm going to be drawing Bishop.
Sweet.
Because next week, we will be reviewing a DC film, and I'll save Hourman for that.
And what's the film?
Superman Red Sun. It's a DC animated film. I've been looking forward to it for a while. I've been hearing really good things.
Yeah, it recently came out like a week ago, right?
Yeah, digitally. I don't think it's been released on Blu-ray yet, but it will be soon.
That's the story of Superman's Krypton ship landing in Soviet Russia as opposed to Smallville, Kansas.
Exactly.
It's like an alternate reality story.
It's an Elseworlds.
So look forward to that next week, guys. As always, don't forget to share, rate, review, and subscribe to us if you haven't already. You guys are the reason why we do this show, and we love it when you reach out to us and you share our content across the web. Special thanks to John Spees and Bodo Winter for executive producing this show, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
Up and away.
True believers.